They say love is blind, but obsession, ambition, and betrayal can blind you faster. Andrew Monroe was the poster child of success, a self-made millionaire with a stunning mansion in Beverly Hills, a thriving investment portfolio, and a picture-perfect marriage. Yet behind the immaculate facade, a sinister betrayal brewed. One heated night, Andrew shoved his pregnant wife, Catherine, to protect his mistress a moment that would crack his carefully curated world. Secrets simmered beneath grand chandeliers, whispered at exclusive galas, and haunted private jets en route to hidden islands. And when the truth emerged, it threatened to crumble everything he had built. Andrew Monroe sipped his champagne eyes, scanning the expansive ballroom. The annual West Coast Philanthropy Gala, hosted at the iconic Beverly Hills Hotel, was the crown jewel of the social calendar, attended by the wealthiest and most influential. Andrew was in his element among tech giants like Elon Musk, media moguls like Oprah Winfrey, and philanthropic figures like Bill Gates, who was rumored to make an appearance that evening to promote a new global health initiative. Just a decade ago, Andrew was a junior financial analyst at a modest firm in Cincinnati, meticulously scrounging for each month's rent. Today, at 33, he was a millionaire, many times over, with investment stakes in real estate, green energy, and even a thriving luxury car dealership chain. His network was formidable, his presence commanding. He had a taste for elegant suits, a penchant for grand gestures, and an unquenchable hunger for more deals, more influence, more admiration. Andrew's wife, Catherine Monroe, stood at his side, radiant in a flowing emerald gown. 7 months pregnant, she glowed with a serenity that drew the attention of countless admirers. Where Andrew's world had once been lonely, Catherine brought warmth. They married young, forging a partnership that felt unbreakable. She had witnessed his rise and gently reminded him to ground his ambition with compassion. But behind Andrew's calm facade lurked restlessness. While Catherine and their unborn child should have completed his happiness, Andrew found himself too enthralled by the world's endless temptations. He wasn't content. He wanted to forge an empire that rivaled the biggest names in American business, and with that desire came a whirlwind of new faces and endless travel. Lately, Catherine's delicate condition meant fewer lavish trips and fewer nights of partying, just the opening Andrew needed to slip into temptation. Andrew. Catherine said, her voice soft but tinged with concern. "Are you all right? You seem a little distant." He plastered a reassuring smile across his face. "I'm great. Just thinking about the potential partnerships tonight." His voice was breezy casual, but as soon as Catherine's gaze moved away, he scanned the crowd once more, looking for someone else. A new presence, a forbidden intrigue. Her name was Elena Rossi, an Italian-American PR executive known for her impeccable networking and unstoppable charm. She had bright blue eyes, an effortless style, and an insatiable ambition that mirrored Andrew's. A few months back, Andrew had met Elena at a tech conference in San Francisco, where she was representing a medical startup. Their connection was immediate, magnetic. They'd exchanged business cards, flirted discreetly over late-night cocktails, and eventually succumbed to an affair that neither of them fully planned, but both desired. That evening at the gala, Elena wore a shimmering silver gown, the back cut low enough to turn heads all across the ballroom. When Andrew spotted her from across the floor, a wave of adrenaline coursed through him. She met his eyes for just a second, offering a subtle tilt of her wine glass, before turning away to network with a film producer. The message was clear. "I'm here, and I won't be ignored." Andrew's heart pounded as he fought to keep his composure. Catherine remained unaware of the storm brewing around her. She chatted politely with a few other pregnant wives, discussing baby names and doctor recommendations. Andrew felt a twinge of guilt as he watched Catherine, her face glowing with maternal pride. The child she carried was a symbol of their love. He'd promised himself that he would be different from the men who let success corrode their personal lives. Yet the lure of Elena's ambition and the rebellious thrill of secrecy tugged at him. The more Andrew succeeded, the more he felt bored with routine. Elena was a wildfire, unpredictable and bewitching. In fleeting moments, he feared that Catherine's gentle warmth had grown too predictable. Halfway through the evening, Andrew quietly slipped away from Catherine's side, using the excuse of checking his phone for an urgent business call. He navigated the packed ballroom, weaving past the swirling sea of tuxedos and glittering gowns, until he reached a secluded corridor near the lavish bathrooms. Elena stood there, leaning against a marble pillar, swirling her champagne. "You made me wait," she teased, arching an eyebrow. Her voice held a silky confidence. "My wife was with me," he replied, glancing over his shoulder to ensure no one was eavesdropping. "I'm here now." The corner of her mouth curved into a smile. "So you are." She stepped closer, looking into his eyes. "I missed you." Andrew closed the distance, inhaling the sweet scent of her perfume. "We're risking too much," he whispered, though the words lacked conviction. "We'll be careful," Elena promised. She brushed a fingertip across his lapel. "Because we both know we can't stay away from each other." He nodded, swallowing hard. This was the night that would set in motion a chain of events neither could predict. In that corridor, amid opulent wallpaper and hushed voices, Andrew sealed his fate with a single kiss that somehow felt more electric than all his successes combined. In the following weeks, Catherine noticed subtle changes in Andrew. He was more absent at home, frequently slipping away to urgent meetings or investor calls. Their family dinners, once a cherished ritual, became rushed affairs. His phone would light up with messages at odd hours, which he justified as time zone differences when dealing with overseas clients. Andrew's entire world had become a balancing act. On the business front, he was orchestrating the final steps to acquire a massive real estate property in downtown Los Angeles, a deal that had the potential to skyrocket his net worth and establish him as a formidable player in West Coast real estate. On the personal front, he was juggling 2 women, the mother of his child, whom he had loved for years, and the new mistress who ignited a passion he never knew he craved. But cracks began to show. Catherine sensed his growing distance. Her once delicate constitution, taxed by the stress of a complicated pregnancy, made her worry that her husband was drifting away at the most critical moment. One evening, Catherine confronted him. "Andrew," she said softly, standing in the doorway of his home office. "I've been thinking, you've been so busy lately. We hardly talk anymore. Is something wrong?" Andrew lifted his head from his laptop, eyes wary. He forced a comforting smile. "I'm fine, Kath. The new deal is massive. I'm trying to stay on top of everything so that we can—" He paused, searching for the right words, "so that we can have the best future for us and the baby." She walked over gently, resting a hand on her belly. "I appreciate everything you do for us, but I worry. You've changed somehow." Guilt gnawed at him. He stood and approached her, placing a hand over hers on her belly. He remembered the first time she'd told him she was pregnant, the overwhelming joy, the tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I promise once this deal is done, I'll slow down. We'll spend more time together." It's just temporary. Relief flashed across her features, but only for a moment. All right, Catherine whispered. Just remember, we're in this together. Andrew enveloped her in a hug, the weight of his double life pressing down like a cage around his heart. He couldn't deny that Catherine's presence provided comfort, a respite from the chaos, but his phone buzzed with a text from Elena as he held his wife, and he couldn't resist sneaking a glance once Catherine looked away. The text read, "I miss you. Need to see you tonight." That night, Andrew insisted he had a late meeting with an overseas investor. Catherine believed him, or at least she pretended to. But her eyes brimmed with tears once he left. She walked to the nursery they were designing, running her fingers across a tiny pair of blue booties. She tried to ignore the dread brewing in her heart. As Catherine's due date approached, her health became increasingly delicate. Doctors advised her to minimize stress and prioritize rest. She found herself needing more of Andrew's presence, not just financially, but emotionally. She yearned to share her worries, her hopes, the subtle shifts in the baby's movements that she felt each day. But Andrew's presence was ephemeral. He was physically in their grand house only half the time. His mind seemed always somewhere else. In truth, Andrew was embroiled in an intense negotiation with a consortium of investors for his downtown Los Angeles real estate project. The numbers involved were astronomical $150 million to secure prime land intended for a luxury hotel, private condos, and high-end retail. If successful, Andrew would join the ranks of legendary tycoons, a dream he'd harbored since the days he lived in a cramped studio apartment. Elena, too, was pushing him to accelerate their relationship. She hinted that he should consider leaving Catherine, especially given the baby's birth would only complicate matters further. Whenever Andrew resisted the idea, she'd remind him of the excitement and ambition they shared, painting a future where they would be unstoppable partners in business and in life. Caught between these two forces, Andrew began to unravel. Every day, he juggled urgent phone calls, clandestine rendezvous with Eleanor, and concerned messages from Catherine. The guilt and anxiety gnawed at him, but the thought of halting his passionate affair felt impossible. One evening, Catherine made a desperate move. Feeling a sharp pain in her back, she called Andrew repeatedly, only to be sent to voicemail again and again. In a panic, she rang his executive assistant, who reluctantly divulged that he was at a private dinner discussing a business matter. Catherine, trembling, clutched her phone. She knew Andrew's deal was crucial, but her heart pounded with fear. What if there was a complication with her pregnancy, and he wasn't there? Finally, Andrew answered. "Catherine, I'm in the middle of something urgent," he hissed into the phone, stepping outside the upscale restaurant where he'd been dining with Elena and two potential investors. "Is this absolutely necessary, Andrew?" she said through tears. "I'm in pain. I'm scared. Something is wrong." A flicker of concern crossed his features. "Did you call Dr. Fletcher?" She nodded, though he couldn't see. "He's on his way. But I need you, Andrew. Please come home." The moment stretched taut. Andrew glanced back at the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows. Eleanor watched him from inside her expression, stern, wanting him to conclude the call. The investors were sipping their wine, glancing at their phones. This dinner was crucial for the future of his empire. Yet Catherine's voice trembled with genuine fear. "Okay," Andrew said softly, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I'll come home. I'm on my way." When he returned to the table, Elena raised an eyebrow. "You're leaving my wife. She's experiencing complications. I have to go." Elena's eyes hardened. These men flew in from Tokyo for this meeting. Andrew clenched his jaw. I can't ignore Catherine's needs right now. He paid the bill hastily, apologized to the investors, and left. Elena's gaze followed him, smoldering with disappointment. She hated how Catherine, unseen and distant, still held the power to pull Andrew away. Meanwhile, Catherine waited anxiously at home, doubled over in pain. When Andrew arrived, he found her pale-faced, breathless tears streaming. Dr. Fletcher examined her, concluding that while the baby was healthy, Catherine's stress levels were alarmingly high. She needed her husband's consistent emotional support, not just a promise of wealth. That night, Andrew slept fitfully. Catherine dozed off in his arms, relieved he was there. But Andrew lay awake, mind churning. He felt trapped in his responsibilities, uncertain where his heart truly lay. He wanted to be a good father and husband. He also wanted to pursue the scorching, thrilling romance with Elena. He convinced himself that he could keep both worlds separate, at least for now. Catherine's suspicions solidified the next day. While Andrew was at a morning meeting, she gathered laundry to wash. She picked up one of his suit jackets from the bedroom floor and felt a phone vibrating in the pocket. Confused, Catherine pulled out a sleek second phone. It was locked, requiring a passcode, but the screen briefly lit up with a name she'd never seen before. Eleanor Rossi, accompanied by a text preview. Last night was unforgettable. Thinking about you. Catherine's heart lurched. A cold wave swept over her. Her mind raced with 1,000 explanations. Could it be just a business contact? A flirtatious client? No. The tone was too personal. She felt dizzy sinking onto the bed phone, clutched in her hand. The baby kicked inside her as though sensing her turmoil. Andrew had another phone, one she'd never known existed. Catherine tried every passcode she could think of, birthdays, anniversaries, but none worked. Eventually, she placed it on the bedside table, trembling with anger and heartbreak. When Andrew returned that evening, Catherine was seated in the living room, the secret phone in her hand. He froze in the foyer, color draining from his face. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Catherine's voice cut through the silence. Who is Elena Rossi? A million lies fluttered through Andrew's mind, but Catherine's tearful eyes told him any deception would only deepen the wound. He started to stammer. She's a work contact. Catherine shot up from the couch, a trembling hand pressing against her pregnant belly. Don't lie to me, Andrew. I saw the message she sent. How long have you been seeing her? He closed his eyes, breathing heavily. It's complicated, Catherine. Complicated, she spat, voice breaking. You're carrying on an affair while I'm pregnant with your child. He stepped forward, arms raised in a pleading gesture. I never wanted to hurt you. Elena and I, it just happened. I promise it doesn't change how I feel about you. Catherine let out a bitter laugh, tears streaking her cheeks. It already has. You've been distant, absent and lying to me for months. How could you do this to us? Andrew stared at her guilt etched into his features. He saw the heartbreak he'd caused, recognized his own selfishness. He tried to approach her, but she took a step back. Catherine. I felt trapped in my routines, and Elena. She was new, exciting. I'm sorry. I am. I never meant for things to go this far. She shook her head in disbelief. You're sorry. That's all you have to say. For the next hour, they argued, tears and accusations filling the once peaceful home. The baby's due date was just weeks away, and Catherine's voice cracked with every plea for Andrew to end the affair. He insisted he would break it off. He promised to do the right thing for the family. By the time the shouting subsided, Catherine was physically and emotionally drained. Andrew helped her to their bed, offering water and rubbing her back to soothe the tension. Though Catherine let him comfort her, she couldn't suppress the aching betrayal twisting inside. She wanted to believe he'd stop seeing Elena, but she sensed the hold Elena had on him ran dangerously deep. Despite Andrew's vows to end things, Eleanor wasn't prepared to let go. When Andrew tried to break it off, she replied with practiced tears and a flurry of accusations. "I gave you my time, my energy. You promised me we'd build something incredible together," she hissed. "Don't you dare walk away just because your wife found out." Andrew felt cornered by Elena's fury and charmed by her raw charisma all at once. He tried to reason with her. "You don't understand. Catherine's pregnant, and this affair is tearing everything apart." Elena's eyes blazed. "Don't insult me. I know exactly what's at stake. But did you think you could just use me and throw me away? Remember the NDA you signed for this real estate deal? All that insider information you confided in me when you needed someone to strategize with. If you walk away, you'll be leaving me with a lot of secrets, ones that might interest your competitors." Andrew's stomach twisted. Over the months, he'd shared confidential business plans with Eleanor. She was cunning and well-connected in PR. If word got out about certain aspects of his negotiations, it could ruin the entire deal. Worse, it could spark legal troubles for him. Eleanor knew precisely where and how to apply pressure. Caught in this web, Andrew continued to see Eleanor, albeit in the secret. He spun a new set of lies to Catherine, insisting that he was wrapping up his project so he could dedicate all his time to her and the baby. Catherine, though still seething from betrayal, tried to believe him. She attended her prenatal checkups alone more often than not, refusing to let Andrew accompany her until he could prove the affair was over. It happened on a night that should have been celebratory. Andrew had just closed the gargantuan downtown Los Angeles deal. His real estate acquisition was finally secured. He returned home mind-exhilarated by the success and anxious about how to juggle his double life's next phase. Catherine was in the living room sorting through a pile of baby clothes. She looked up, exhaustion and heartbreak etched into her face. Before Andrew could speak, his phone buzzed. Elena again. Catherine shot him a scornful look. "Are you still in contact with her?" she asked, her tone hollow. He swallowed hard. "It's just about the real estate deal," he lied. "Nothing personal." Catherine stared at him, her voice trembling with anger. "I've tried to be patient, Andrew, but I'm done with the excuses. Our child is due soon, and you are still chasing after that woman. I need you to pick who you want in your life, me and our baby, or your mistress." Andrew's phone buzzed again, and Catherine grabbed it from the table before he could react. She saw another message from Elena. "I miss you, Andrew. We should celebrate tonight." Seething, Catherine turned on him. "It's not just business. You keep lying and I—" She broke off, tears streaming down her face. "I can't take it anymore." Andrew reached out to snatch the phone back. "Give me that!" he shouted, panic surging. Their voices rose, echoing against the high ceilings of their opulent home. Catherine clutched the phone to her chest, and Andrew lunged to retrieve it. In a split second of fury and desperation, he shoved her aside harder than he ever meant to. Catherine stumbled. She was heavily pregnant, unbalanced. She fell backwards onto the hardwood floor with a sickening thud. For a terrifying moment, everything froze. Catherine's eyes were wide with shock. Pain contorted her face, and a sharp cry tore from her throat. Andrew gasped, heart pounding. He rushed to her side, dropping to his knees. "Oh God, Catherine, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean... Are you okay?" She whimpered, hands cradling her stomach. Pain shot through her body, and she struggled to breathe. I think something's wrong." Andrew's entire world narrowed to that moment, the horror of what he'd done. He fumbled for his phone, ignoring Elena's messages now, and dialed 911. As he relayed their address to the operator, Catherine lay curled on the floor, tears and panic in her eyes. In the minutes before the ambulance arrived, Andrew held Catherine's hand, apologizing over and over. He could hardly breathe, paralyzed by the realization he had physically harmed the woman carrying his child. This single act, born out of desperation and rage, would irrevocably change everything. Paramedics arrived, strapping Catherine to a gurney, hooking her up to monitors. She winced with every bump. Andrew rode along in the ambulance panic, scorching his veins. The paramedics asked routine questions. But Andrew's guilt made him feel like every syllable revealed his darkest secrets. At the hospital, they rushed Catherine into an examination room. The sight of bright fluorescent lights and frantic nurses hammered Andrew's nerves. He paced the hallway, hands shaking. Dr. Fletcher emerged grave-faced. "There's a risk of premature labor. We need to monitor Catherine closely. She's under immense stress, and that fall could have caused complications." Andrew tried to speak, but no sound emerged. Guilt hammered him with relentless force. Dr. Fletcher eyed him with disapproval. "I understand tensions are high, Andrew, but Catherine and the baby's well-being must be your priority. She needs calm, no more stress." For hours, Andrew remained by Catherine's bedside. She dozed in and out of sleep, receiving IV fluids and medication to prevent early labor. When she finally opened her eyes, Andrew gently squeezed her hand. "Catherine, he began. She turned her face away, tears slipping down her cheeks. Her voice cracked barely above a whisper. "Don't." Andrew felt as though his heart was being crushed in a vice. He realized how far he'd fallen from the proud husband, anticipating fatherhood, to a man who had literally knocked his wife down because of another woman. He wanted to tear the last few months from his life, to rewrite every moment he'd chosen Eleanor over Catherine. The baby's vital signs remained steady, but Catherine was forced to remain in the hospital for close observation. Friends, neighbors, and even Andrew's mother visited. None fully understood the cause of Catherine's accident. Andrew had given a vague explanation about her slipping. Catherine remained silent, her eyes hollow. Andrew's PR-minded thought was to keep the real story quiet, but the guilt festered. Each time he met Catherine's gaze, he felt her fear her heart break, and the intangible distance that now separated them like a black canyon. He also felt a wave of self-loathing, realizing that in pursuit of ambition and pleasure, he had betrayed everything that once mattered. As Catherine lay in the hospital recovering, Andrew faced another blow. Elena had learned of Catherine's hospitalization and the real reason behind it. Perhaps she heard from a mutual acquaintance, or perhaps Andrew himself confessed too much in a moment of panic. Regardless, she seized the opportunity. Eleanor threatened to expose Andrew's affair if he didn't fulfill her demands, a public acknowledgement of their relationship once Catherine was stable, a promise to financially back her new PR firm, and a guarantee that she'd remain a key advisor in his real estate ventures. Her emails were coldly explicit, enumerating details of their affair and the business secrets he'd confided in her. If Andrew refused, she promised to leak it all to the media and his key investors. Cornered, Andrew sought legal advice. He feared that if Elena went public, it would destroy not only his business reputation, but also any remaining hope of salvaging his marriage. He had built an empire on trust and the illusion of impeccable character. A scandal of this magnitude could see him ostracized, possibly even facing lawsuits for unethical conduct. Worse still, the knowledge that he'd harmed Catherine and almost jeopardized the pregnancy made him certain that the only moral path was to break all ties with Eleanor. But Eleanor was cunning. He could not simply pay her off. She wanted more than money. She wanted status and power. Caught in this tempest, Andrew made an ill-advised decision. He tried to broker a secret deal with Elena, a sizable lump sum. Payment, hush money, combined with a promise to give her a minor role in one of his new companies. He believed this would placate her enough to vanish from his life. Yet as soon as the money landed in Elena's account, she demanded even more. She threatened to come clean to Catherine, to appear on national television, to publish text messages and photos. Andrew realized too late that he had handed over the leverage Elena needed to tighten her control. Throughout Catherine's hospital stay, Andrew visited daily, though their conversations were terse and stilted. Each day, Dr. Fletcher reported that Catherine's condition was improving the baby stable. Yet her emotional wounds were raw and deep. She asked Andrew more than once to leave her alone to let her recover without his presence. He refused to abandon her. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the drawn curtains, Andrew found the courage to speak. "Kath, I can't begin to apologize for what I did. It was inexcusable, and I'm ashamed of who I've become." She stared at the window, silent. His voice trembled. "I let ambition blind me. I let lust for success and for Elena lead me astray. But I swear to you, I want to fix this. I'll do anything to make it right." Catherine blinked back tears. "Then end it. End it for good. Cut her out of your life, and tell me the truth about everything." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I will. I promise." She turned to him, arching his face for any hint of duplicity. "Andrew, this isn't just about you and me anymore. I'm bringing a child into this world, and I can't have this chaos. If you want to repair anything, you'll have to be honest and put our family first, truly, this time." Andrew reached for her hand, relieved when she let him hold it. "I will, Catherine. I swear." Within that hospital room, Andrew felt a spark of hope. For the first time, he understood the gravity of what he was risking. The monstrous lie he'd been living had already done irreparable harm. But maybe, just maybe, he could salvage something. Buoyed by the possibility of redemption, Andrew requested a final meeting with Elena at her high-rise apartment in downtown Los Angeles. He came prepared. His attorney had drafted a cease-and-desist letter threatening legal action if Elena continued to blackmail him. He also brought a single check funds to reimburse the hush money he'd previously given her. This time, he was resolute. No more payoffs, no more deals. Elena greeted him at the door, in a sleek black dress, her smile frigid. "I see you finally decided to crawl back," she said, stepping aside to let him in. Andrew walked in, scanning the minimalist decor. The view from her floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the LA skyline sparkling with possibility. "I'm not here to crawl back," he replied, voice steady. "I'm here to end this for good." He placed the envelope on the glass coffee table. "Inside is a letter from my legal team. It outlines the legal ramifications you'll face if you continue to threaten or defame me." And this check, he slid another slip of paper forward, is the exact sum I paid you before. I'm not buying your silence. I'm returning the money so you have no leverage claiming it was hush money or an investment. We're done. Elena's face darkened. You think a piece of paper can stop me? You think I care about your attorneys? I think you'll care about the countersuits and potential charges if you try to release any fabricated or private information, Andrew shot back. You're free to speak the truth about our affair, any lie I have to face. But if you lie or twist facts to sabotage my business, you'll face serious consequences. Elena clenched her jaw, pacing the length of her living room. You're throwing everything away, Andrew. We could have built an empire together. Andrew gazed at her, recalling the thrilling nights, the heady excitement she brought. Yet in that moment, all he felt was sorrow for the man he'd become. I have a family, Elena. My wife and child come first. She scoffed. Now you remember your family. After all we did. His expression hardened. I made mistakes, terrible ones. This ends now. I won't negotiate or plead anymore. Do what you must, but stay out of my life. Something in Andrew's unwavering tone gave Elena pause. Her eyes flickered with a mix of anger, regret, and maybe even admiration for his newfound resolve. But she refused to let it show. Fine, she finally hissed, but don't forget Andrew. I can still go public. Good luck keeping your perfect image. Andrew turned to leave. At the door, he hesitated. I'm sorry, he murmured. I'm sorry I led you on. But this is over. With that, he walked out into the corridor, shoulders tight with tension. He half expected Elena to run after him or to fling more insults, but all he heard was the echo of the door slamming behind him. Though anxiety twisted in his gut, he felt the first real sense of clarity in months. News of Andrew's affair did reach certain circles. Elena, furious, leaked enough rumors to cause a minor scandal among Los Angeles's elite. A few tabloids published speculative pieces about Andrew's personal life, though none had solid evidence to run a definitive exposé. Some investors grew skittish, prompting Andrew to grant a press conference, clarifying that his personal matters would not affect his business. His lawyers threatened lawsuits against any entity that broadcasted unverified claims about the assault on Catherine. Meanwhile, Catherine was discharged from the hospital, placed on strict bed rest until her delivery. Andrew moved back into their home, devoting his time to her care. Tensions lingered. Catherine often turned away from him when he tried to help, the memory of being shoved and the heartbreak of betrayal still fresh. Yet Andrew persisted, determined to show her that his remorse was genuine. Their house, once filled with the clamor of social gatherings and business calls, fell hushed. Andrew cancelled most appointments, restricting calls to short bursts in another room. Each day, he read to Catherine, prepared her meals under doctor's guidelines, and assisted her with everything from adjusting pillows to massaging her swollen ankles. Slowly, the walls she'd built around herself began to crack, allowing small glimmers of hope. One late afternoon, Catherine looked at him, voice soft. I'm scared. He placed his hand over hers. Scared of what? Her eyes filled with tears. Scared you'll hurt me again. Not just physically, but emotionally. I don't know how to trust you anymore. Andrew's throat tightened. He knelt by her side, heart aching. I understand. I can't promise it'll be easy, but I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of your trust. She searched his face, pain and longing intermingled. I want to believe you. He kissed the back of her hand gently, letting his tears fall. "I love you, Catherine. I let darkness overshadow that truth. But I do love you." Time passed with agonizing slowness. Their communications improved bit by bit. Catherine began to share her anxieties about the upcoming birth. Andrew reassured her, reminding her that Dr. Fletcher was confident the baby would be healthy. Although their marriage was riddled with fractures, they were both fighting for the same future, a safe arrival for their child, and a chance at renewal. It was a humid summer evening when Catherine went into labor. Weeks of bed rest culminated in a sudden rush of contractions strong enough to send them speeding back to the hospital. Andrew gripped her hand, the entire ambulance ride, comforting her through every searing wave of pain. He felt the weight of redemption in that grip, praying for a miracle that would deliver both mother and child safely. At the hospital, Catherine was wheeled into the delivery room. Andrew stayed by her side, pushing aside the haunting memories of the last time they were there. Dr. Fletcher and the nurses moved quickly, hooking Catherine up to monitors. The labor was tense. Her body was still recovering from the trauma of the fall, and the baby's heartbeat occasionally wavered. Hours passed like a fever dream. Catherine screamed tears of pain mingling with fear. Andrew held her hand, whispering encouragement. His own tears dampened his shirt collar, every muscle taut with desperation. He kept recalling that night he shoved her, the look in her eyes, the danger he'd put them in. Now he wanted nothing more than to ensure their child arrived safely. At last, a piercing newborn cry shattered the tension. Dr. Fletcher held up a tiny baby boy, swaddled and perfect, wailing at the top of his lungs. Catherine collapsed back against the pillows, tears of relief streaming down her flushed cheeks. Andrew felt his own breath catch in his throat, a maelstrom of gratitude, guilt, and overwhelming love surging through him. The nurses placed the baby on Catherine's chest. She gazed down at their son, eyes brimming with awe, running a trembling hand across his soft cheek. Andrew leaned in, pressing a tender kiss to Catherine's forehead. "He's beautiful." He choked out tears falling freely. "Thank you for giving us this miracle." Catherine locked eyes with him, a fragile smile on her lips. In that raw moment, no words were needed. Their child's tiny heartbeat pulsed between them, forging an unbreakable bond that overshadowed every betrayal and lie, at least for that moment. The hospital room had grown quieter with each passing day. Machines no longer beeped with urgency. Nurses came and went in softer tones. Catherine's condition had stabilized, and Aaron, tiny pink and full of new life, was now the quiet anchor at the center of it all. But the true healing wasn't happening in the blood pressure readings or discharge charts. It was unfolding in the slow, fragile space between Catherine and Andrew. Every day, Andrew showed up. He brought fresh flowers, held Aaron without being asked, and stood by Catherine's bedside without pushing for forgiveness. He read her poetry, old love letters he once wrote, and never sent, and sat silently when she needed space. There were no grand declarations, just presence. That presence mattered more than he realized. Catherine watched him through guarded eyes. She saw the tension in his shoulders, the quiet remorse that haunted every word he spoke. He was no longer the man who breezed through meetings with charm and confidence. That version of Andrew had been stripped away. What stood before her now was someone raw, humbled, and broken, but trying. One evening after Aaron had drifted off in her arms, Catherine spoke softly. "I never thought I'd end up here." she said, her voice barely more than a breath. Not just in a hospital bed, but here with you. Wondering if I'm crazy to let you stay. Andrew, seated beside her, looked up slowly. You're not crazy. I might be, she said, her eyes filling with unshed tears. After what you did, what you hid, what you risked. You don't just get to walk back into this room and ask me to pretend it didn't happen. I'm not asking you to pretend. Andrew said, his voice steady. I'm asking you to let me prove I can be better. She turned her head away, staring at the monitor that displayed her vitals. Do you know how terrifying it was? Lying on that floor, wondering if I'd lose the baby. Wondering if I'd lost you completely. Andrew blinked, his throat tightening. I see it in your eyes every day. And I hate myself for it. I loved you so much, she whispered. Even when you started slipping away, I held on. I made excuses. I told myself we were just growing, not breaking. Andrew reached over gently, placing his hand over hers. I don't deserve your love. I don't. But if there's even a piece of it left, I want to fight for it. Catherine looked at their hands, his rough with guilt, hers trembling with uncertainty. She wanted to pull away to protect herself, but she didn't. I don't know if I can ever forget, she said. I don't know if I want to. You shouldn't, he said. What I did should never be erased. But I promise you, Catherine, I've ended it. Elena's out of my life. I'm stepping back from the company, all that ambition, all that running. I see now it was just me, trying to outrun my own emptiness. She said nothing. Being here, he continued watching you give birth to our son, watching you hold on when I gave you every reason to let go. It changed me. I don't want the life I built before. I want this. I want you. I want Aaron. Catherine closed her eyes. The ache in her heart remained, but so did something else, something unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. Hope. I'm not making promises, she said finally. I can't just hand you my heart again like nothing happened. I know, he said. I need boundaries. I need space. And if I see even a hint of dishonesty, if I feel unsafe for even a second, I will walk away and never look back. He nodded slowly. I would expect nothing less. For the first time in weeks, a flicker of relief crossed her face. She glanced at Aaron, who stirred softly in her arms. We named him Aaron, she said. It means mountain of strength. Andrew smiled faintly. That's perfect. The next morning, Catherine was discharged. Andrew insisted on driving her home. He opened every door, carried every bag, adjusted every seat. Not because she asked, but because he needed to. Back at the house, things were quiet. The once grand, echoing estate felt different now. Not in its size or elegance, but in the energy that filled it. Catherine walked from room to room, like she was seeing it all for the first time. Every photo on the walls, every corner where shadows once lingered. In the nursery, she placed Aaron in his crib and turned to find Andrew standing at the doorway watching. You sure you want to be here? She asked. Yes, he said. Not because I have nowhere else to go, but because this is the only place I want to be. She didn't smile, but she didn't turn him away. And for now, that was enough. The weeks after Aaron's birth passed in a haze of sleepless nights, soft lullabies and whispered apologies. The rhythm of life slowed to the heartbeat of a newborn, fragile, unpredictable, and beautiful. But behind the tender feedings and shared diaper duties was a deeper, more delicate reconstruction, one that required more than bottles and baby wipes. It required trust. Andrew knew that regaining Catherine's trust would be the greatest challenge of his life and the most important. The old days of grand gestures and flashy promises were gone. Catherine didn't want diamonds. She wanted stability. She wanted truth. And she made that clear. In a quiet conversation one night while Aaron lay sleeping between them in a bassinet, Catherine spoke the words Andrew had been preparing to hear. "I'm not going to pretend things are fine," she said, her voice even. "We're not just going to bounce back like nothing happened. What you did, it broke something in me. And I don't know if I'll ever see you the same way again." Andrew listened without interruption, the weight of her words slicing deeper than any accusation. He nodded. "I understand," he said softly. "And I won't ask for your forgiveness, not yet. I'll earn it, day by day. No shortcuts." So they began therapy, together, separately, with professionals who didn't sugarcoat, who helped them pull back layers of wounds and truths, forcing them to confront the reasons behind Andrew's betrayal. Catherine's quiet suffering and the silence that had crept into their marriage long before Elna ever arrived. Catherine voiced her pain, the nights she felt unseen, the months when Andrew had chosen ambition over affection. Andrew confessed his insecurities, the need to feel powerful, the fear of becoming ordinary, and the reckless hunger that led him to chase validation outside their home. There were tears, fights, sessions when Catherine stormed out, and days Andrew questioned whether they'd ever be whole again. But there were breakthroughs too. Catherine began painting again, transforming a spare room into a studio. The scent of oil paint returned to their home, and with it a sliver of her old self, vibrant, expressive, open. Andrew stepped back from business. He promoted a COO to manage daily operations and blocked out time each afternoon to be present. Not just physically, but emotionally. He read to Aaron, learned how to cook simple meals for Catherine, and started journaling, something their therapist had suggested. Slowly the mansion changed. The echo of high heels and corporate calls gave way to baby laughter. The shuffle of socked feet and the quiet rustle of pages turned in late-night reading sessions. Catherine noticed. She noticed when Andrew turned down a lucrative speaking event to attend Aaron's first checkup. She noticed when he turned off his phone without being asked. She noticed when he sat beside her, night after night, just to talk, not as a husband, desperate to defend himself, but as a man trying to listen. And although the memory of the shove, the lies, and Elena's name still lingered like a shadow, Catherine allowed herself, slowly, carefully, to believe again. Not in fairy tale redemption, but in effort, in humility, in growth. Their story was no longer about perfection. It was about rebuilding one fragile step at a time. The morning sun streamed gently through the arched windows of the Monroe estate, casting soft golden light on the hardwood floors of the nursery. A year had passed, 12 long, harrowing months, since that night of heartbreak and fear. But now the house echoed with the sound of baby giggles, the flutter of balloons, and the scent of vanilla cake drifting in from the kitchen. Aaron Monroe was turning one. The celebration was modest by their old standards. No socialites, no photographers, no catered grandeur. Just close family, a few old friends, and the people who had stood by them when their world collapsed. Laughter rang out from the backyard where folding chairs dotted the lawn, and a banner fluttered in the breeze. "Happy first birthday, Aaron." Catherine stood at the edge of the patio, a glass of lemonade in hand. Her eyes followed Aaron as he sat in his high chair, tiny fists gleefully smashing bits of cake onto his tray. Beside him, Andrew crouched down, laughing with unrestrained joy, frosting smudged on the cuff of his shirt. A quiet smile touched Catherine's lips. She didn't forget, she never would. The memory of the shove, the betrayal, the hospital, and the grief would always live somewhere inside her. But today wasn't about the past. It was about the present they'd fought to rebuild and the future they were learning to trust again. After the guests departed and the last of the paper plates were tossed, the house returned to its peaceful hush. Aaron slept upstairs, tuckered out from the excitement, and Catherine found herself in the living room with Andrew sitting on the floor amid wrapping paper and ribbons. She looked over at him, her voice soft. He had a good day. Andrew nodded, eyes still focused on a half-opened gift. He did. And you? You looked happy today. There was a pause. I was, she admitted. Not because I forgot, but because we got here. Andrew turned to her, his expression open, vulnerable. I know I'll never be able to erase what I did, and I don't expect you to forget, but I hope more than anything that we can keep building. Something better. He reached out, gently placing his hand over hers. She didn't pull away. Instead, she looked down at their hands and let out a soft breath. I never thought I'd say this, but I believe you. Not because of what you've said, but because of what you've shown. You didn't just ask for forgiveness. You worked for it. And that matters. Andrew's eyes glistened. You matter. You and Aaron are my entire life. They sat in silence, the weight of shared pain easing under the warmth of quiet understanding. A few minutes later, Aaron stirred upstairs, letting out a muffled cry. Catherine stood to check on him, but Andrew placed a hand on her arm. I'll go, he said. Get some rest. She watched him ascend the stairs, and for the first time in a long time, she felt something settle in her chest. Not blind trust, not naive hope, but peace. Earned, deliberate, fragile peace. In the quiet of their rebuilt life, Catherine knew the road ahead would still have bumps. But after the storms they had weathered this was a new dawn. And it was enough. Some stories end in irreparable tragedy. Others choose a hopeful new beginning. For Andrew and Catherine Monroe, betrayal and heartbreak paved a treacherous path to redemption. Though scars and memories never fully fade, their commitment to change brought forth the promise of a stronger tomorrow. Andrew discovered that success means little without someone to share it with, and Catherine found the courage to forgive without losing her self-respect. Their journey stands as a reminder that even from the deepest depths of pain, it's possible to rise and rebuild. If this story moved, made you reflect, or offered hope, please support our channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your engagement helps us bring you more powerful tales of love, struggle, and redemption. Join us in exploring the complexities of human hearts, one story at a time together. Let's keep our faith in the power of transformation alive. He was the dashing mogul every ambitious entrepreneur wanted to emulate. She was the poised, loyal wife who had stood by him from humble beginnings. No one would have guessed that behind the gated mansion's manicured lawns, betrayal festered like poison. Until one day, in a flurry of financial sabotage, he let his mistress cut off his wife's credit cards. It was humiliating, scandalous, and only the beginning of a whirlwind that would pit powerful business alliances against each other. In a boardroom confrontation that stunned everyone, the CEO himself stepped in, but not in the way anyone expected. Buckle up. This is the story of love, greed, and revenge. Jordan Alberts was not born into luxury. He grew up in a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Milwaukee, where he learned to hustle by selling candy bars door to door at the age of 10. Over the years, Jordan's unwavering determination and charm propelled him into better circles. First at a local startup, then into his own tech company that caught the eye of an angel investor. By the time he was 35, Jordan was a self-made millionaire, a prominent figure on various entrepreneurial boards, and had connections with people like Mark Cuban, Bill Gates, and a few top executives at Google. His wife, Elizabeth Alberts née Wagner, had been with him through everything. They met in college at a small tech entrepreneur club meeting, both bright-eyed and dreaming of changing the world. Elizabeth came from a modest background, too. Her father was a retired auto mechanic, and her mother a homemaker. She'd studied communications with an emphasis on public relations, and it was through Elizabeth's network of contacts that Jordan first gained access to small local pitch events. While Jordan pitched his innovative software for automating small business tasks, Elizabeth made calls, arranged coffee meetups, and tried to capture the interest of potential backers. They married in a little chapel by Lake Michigan. It wasn't a lavish wedding, no star-studded guest list, no fancy reception at the Ritz. But to Jordan and Elizabeth, it felt perfect. A union built on genuine love, unwavering support, and a shared dream of building a life and a business empire together. Over the next decade, they grew from a modest condominium in Milwaukee to a stunning estate in Austin near Lake Travis, with a sweeping view of the water and rolling Texas hills. It was there at a philanthropic event organized by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that Jordan's name landed on the radar of top-level investors. His company's smart automation technology was recognized for its potential to transform not just small businesses, but large-scale manufacturing and logistics. Soon after, Jordan's net worth skyrocketed from a mere $5 million to well over $200 million. For a while, everything was picture perfect. The marriage was strong, their personal synergy unwavering. Elizabeth handled some philanthropic duties, organizing events, acting as a goodwill ambassador for Jordan's brand, and forging new partnerships through her PR background. Their household staff adored them, describing Elizabeth as kind, gracious, and always mindful of the people around her. But money can be a seductive force, and success can open doors to darker temptations. Jordan began attending more exclusive networking events in Beverly Hills, New York, and beyond. Elizabeth was often at his side, but there were times she couldn't attend. Perhaps she was busy finalizing the details for a charity gala, or maybe she was simply burnt out from the unrelenting schedule. It was during these times, rare at first, then increasingly common, that Jordan got close to someone else. Her name was Ava Monroe. She was a rising star in the world of technology law, representing high-profile clients like Tesla, Amazon, and a few top-tier cryptocurrency exchanges. She had a reputation for being ruthless in negotiations, seductive in social gatherings, and unbelievably charming behind closed doors. The rumor mill started buzzing the moment Ava was seen at Jordan's table during a private dinner after a tech summit in Las Vegas. Elizabeth wasn't there. She had chosen to stay in Austin, meeting with a team of female entrepreneurs Jordan was mentoring. A few people whispered about Jordan's visible fascination with Ava, the way he leaned in whenever she spoke, how they clinked champagne flutes with an intimacy that suggested more than just business talk. No one knew for certain how fast or how deep it went, but soon the signs became undeniable. Lavish gifts appeared on Ava's social media, including a diamond bracelet, suspiciously similar to the ones Jordan's company had once gifted important clients. Photos emerged of Jordan and Ava at high-end restaurants in Manhattan, always carefully angled to obscure Jordan's face, though keen observers could still identify him by the sliver of a recognizable watch or the faint reflection in a mirrored wall. By the time the rumors reached Elizabeth, they were no longer rumors, but near-confirmed facts. She felt her chest tighten, her world spinning out of control. This couldn't be real. Jordan had always been a loyal partner. But the evidence was too compelling to deny. She confronted him in the privacy of their Lakeview mansion. At first, Jordan denied everything. Yet denial quickly turned into a half-hearted admission once Elizabeth presented him with photographic evidence. Like a skilled negotiator used to controlling deals, Jordan tried to manipulate the situation, insisting that Ava was just a business associate, someone he occasionally had dinner with. But Elizabeth saw right through it. She had always been adept at reading him. A chill settled over their once loving home. Elizabeth, determined to preserve her dignity, demanded they enter marriage counseling, or at the very least step away from high-profile events until they resolved their issues in private. Jordan nodded, providing non-committal answers. He had never liked therapy, never seen the point in discussing feelings with a stranger. He agreed to her wishes on the surface, yet beneath the facade, he continued his involvement with Ava, allowing the illicit relationship to take root. This was the calm before the storm. For soon Elizabeth's sense of betrayal would pale in comparison to the massive financial and emotional blow about to come her way. Weeks passed. Elizabeth tried to focus on her philanthropic work and personal projects, attempting to distract herself from the growing chasm between her and Jordan. When a local charity she sponsored invited her to discuss future donations, Elizabeth discovered something shocking. Her personal credit card was declined. Embarrassment washed over her in front of the unsuspecting staff. She tried another card. Sure, it must have been a glitch, but that too was declined. The staff politely suggested she call her bank, and Elizabeth excused herself with a polite smile, her hands trembling as she left the office. Elizabeth called the bank suspecting fraud or an administrative error. But the bank's representative informed her that both cards had been cancelled the previous week. Under their joint account, they were tied to Jordan's finances, and evidently Jordan had authorized the cancellation. It felt like a punch to the gut. Why on earth would Jordan cancel her cards without her knowledge or consent? They had never had major financial disputes. Elizabeth always had access to family funds, albeit responsibly. She dialed Jordan, but the call went straight to voicemail. She sent him several frantic texts. No response. Later that evening, Jordan came home exuding an air of tired disinterest. Elizabeth confronted him the moment he walked through the door. Under the chandelier's glow, which reflected in her tear-filled eyes, Jordan brushed aside her questions with a dismissive wave. "I needed to consolidate our finances," he said, removing his blazer. "You can use the joint checking account for a while." "No big deal, no big deal." Elizabeth's frustration swelled. "You cancelled my credit cards without even telling me what's going on. Are you punishing me for something?" Jordan's eyes flicked away nervously, and that was when Elizabeth realized he was lying again. The next words that came from his mouth were not only shocking, but also laced with a cruelty she never imagined he was capable of. "Ava suggested we revisit some of my expenses. She found that you were spending frivolously. It made sense to limit credit usage." Elizabeth's heart dropped to her stomach. Ava. That woman was now meddling in their finances. As if the affair wasn't enough, Jordan had allowed this mistress to encroach into an arena that Elizabeth believed was sacred, her own household stability. What is Ava doing reviewing my spending? Since when does your fling get to decide what is or isn't frivolous? Elizabeth spat tears, threatening to spill. Jordan made an attempt at a calming gesture, but his words only fanned the flames. She's helping me restructure. Her firm has great insights into corporate finances. This is about the business, Elizabeth. It's not personal. Not personal. Elizabeth recalled how intimately personal their marriage had always been. They built every aspect of their lives together, from small decisions about wallpaper colors to big entrepreneurial leaps that demanded everything from both of them. Now Jordan was shutting her out, consulting Ava instead. In a quavering voice, Elizabeth demanded, "Reinstate my cards. I am your wife. I have a right to our finances, and you know I've never been irresponsible with money." Jordan's face hardened with a new arrogance. "Not until we finalize our restructure," he said, referring to some nebulous plan Elizabeth knew little about. "I'll handle everything in the meantime." That moment, that cold exchange, was a harbinger of the bigger heartbreak to come. If Jordan was letting Ava control such details, what other aspects of their marriage was he willing to let her sabotage? As the days turned into weeks, Elizabeth discovered one more blow after another. The monthly allowance she used to cover household expenses had been slashed without explanation. The staff, including her personal assistant, was laid off. Bills began piling up, addressed to her name, but with no means to pay them aside from groveling at Jordan's feet. Friends and family started to notice. Elizabeth tried to hide her shame. She confided in her sister Caroline, who was enraged at Jordan. "This is financial abuse," Caroline insisted. "You should speak to a lawyer." Elizabeth shuddered at the thought. She still believed they could salvage their relationship, that Jordan would snap out of whatever daze Ava had put him in. Yet a small part of her whispered that maybe Caroline was right. Then came a fateful meeting at a hotel conference suite in Los Angeles, one that Jordan had insisted Elizabeth attend. It was a gathering of major tech moguls, including Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, who were rumored to be there to discuss new tech innovations in global logistics. When Elizabeth arrived, she quickly realized something was off. She saw Jordan in the lounge area, standing far too close to Ava, exchanging hushed conversations. Seeing Elizabeth from a distance, Jordan slipped away discreetly, leaving Ava behind. Elizabeth approached her husband with a forced smile. "I'm here," she said, desperate to maintain composure. "What's the plan?" Jordan gave a curt nod. "There's a closed-door session for the key players only. You'll have to wait outside." In the past, Elizabeth had always been included in these key player sessions as Jordan's partner and PR advisor. The subtle exclusion burned her pride. She swallowed her anger. "Sure, I can wait." After hours of waiting, she found Jordan and Ava laughing together near the bar. As she approached, Jordan's phone buzzed, and he stepped away. That was when Ava turned a chilling smirk on her face. "You know Jordan's a visionary," Ava said, swirling the wine in her glass. "He needs someone who can keep up with him on all levels: business, ambition, excitement." Elizabeth felt her face flush with anger. "I've been by his side for years. We built this together." Ava gave a theatrical shrug. "Maybe in the past. But times change. People evolve. I guess you were too comfortable." Elizabeth clenched her fists, biting back a retort. She was determined not to make a scene in front of such influential people. But oh, how she wanted to lash out, to expose Ava for the home-wrecker she was. Ava flicked her hair behind her shoulder, noticing Elizabeth's agitation. "Things will be better if you accept it," she cooed, as if offering advice to a friend. Jordan's moved on in more ways than one. The finances are just the beginning. Elizabeth's body went cold. She realized in that moment how truly precarious her situation was. Ava was not simply a fling. She was positioning herself as a partner in Jordan's professional and personal life. The credit cards were just one step in what looked like a systematic campaign to push Elizabeth out of everything she and Jordan had built. Still, Elizabeth refused to crumble. She left the event quietly, but her mind churned with rage and heartbreak. It was time for her to take action. She needed to protect herself, her assets, and her dignity. Little did she know that as she plotted her next move, Jordan and Ava were preparing a financial ambush that would push her to the brink. Only fate and an unexpected intervention by a certain CEO would alter the course of their twisted game. In the days after the Los Angeles conference, Elizabeth attempted to consult with attorneys. She picked up a referral from a friend who once worked with a high-profile divorce lawyer in New York. The initial phone calls were sobering, with Jordan's empire being primarily under his name and her credit cards cancelled. She had limited liquidity to hire top-tier representation. Even so, Elizabeth pressed forward. She managed to scrape together some funds from a personal savings account. Jordan had no access to money she had set aside from her early PR consulting days. It wasn't a large sum, but enough to secure a preliminary consultation. During that consultation, her lawyer, Michelle Liu, a bright and empathetic but hard-hitting attorney based in Houston, laid out the hard truth. Financial abuse and infidelity are serious grounds for divorce, Michelle said, scanning through Elizabeth's financial statements. But if Jordan's funneling money and assets into new accounts under his own name, or shifting resources to places you can't see, we need proof, and we need it fast. Elizabeth swallowed. She recounted Ava's involvement, how she was effectively orchestrating the restructuring. Michelle's pen scribbled quickly over a notepad. You have a right to half of the marital assets, Elizabeth, but it looks like your husband is 2 steps ahead. We must move quickly. The plan was to gather evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing and file a court order to freeze marital assets, ensuring Elizabeth had a fair shot. But as they began drafting documents and rummaging through what records, Elizabeth had an avalanche of shocking details surfaced. Jordan wasn't merely cancelling credit cards. He was transferring stocks from their joint portfolio into an account under his newly formed trust. He had changed the authorized signatory details for a few of their properties, effectively locking Elizabeth out. He was also taking out lines of credit against certain properties, presumably to fund new ventures that, as Elizabeth suspected, involved Ava. The emotional strain weighed heavily on Elizabeth. She couldn't sleep, her appetite waned. Each day felt like standing at the center of a storm. Yet if she thought this was the worst of it, she was mistaken. One evening, after finalizing some documents with Michelle, Elizabeth returned to her mansion to find her key card didn't work on the electronic locks. Pounding on the door, she shouted for the live-in staff if any were left. Seconds later, the door opened slightly, revealing Ava's face. "Jordan's not here," Ava said icily. "You should call next time." Elizabeth's heart hammered. "This is my home. Get out of my way," she demanded, trying to push past. But Ava slid in front of her, refusing to budge. "He told me you're not welcome here anymore until the legal mess is settled," Ava sneered. "I have every right to ask you to leave." Elizabeth was trembling with fury. "You have no rights here. You're the mistress, not the wife." With a cold laugh, Ava stepped aside and pointed at Elizabeth's luggage haphazardly placed in the foyer. "Jordan left these for you," she said. "He said to pack whatever else you need and let security escort you out if you refuse to leave." Elizabeth blinked away tears, her throat raw with outrage. She was being thrown out of her own home by the woman who had intruded into her marriage. That moment was a cruel epiphany. Jordan had not only cut off her finances, but now he was physically pushing her out of the place she had shared with him for years. Yet in all that darkness, a sliver of light emerged the next morning. Elizabeth received a phone call from a close mutual friend, Marcus O'Donnell, who worked with Jordan at a large tech conglomerate in Dallas. Marcus was someone Elizabeth trusted, an executive who had known Jordan since the early days. He had seen them build the company from the ground up. Elizabeth Marcus said, his tone urgent. "I don't know everything that's going on, but I heard from your staff that you've been locked out. There's a board meeting next week. Jordan wants to finalize some big decisions. If you can get to that meeting and talk to the chairman, maybe you can find some leverage." Elizabeth's breath caught in her chest. The chairman of this particular conglomerate was none other than famed CEO David Hartridge, known not just for his visionary leadership, but also for a strict code of ethics. Over the years, Hartridge had invested heavily in Jordan's business. He was the reason Jordan sat on that board. "He's not the type to meddle in personal affairs," Marcus warned. "But if Jordan's pulling stunts that compromise your share in the company, Hartridge might step in. He's big on fairness and hates scandal." It was the glimmer of hope Elizabeth needed. She thanked Marcus profusely. The plan was simple: attend the board meeting, confront Jordan in front of Hartridge, and present enough evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing to ensure the board and possibly the entire conglomerate would not stand for it. She spent the week gathering documents, bank statements, and text message screenshots that implicated Jordan in unscrupulous financial moves. Michelle Liu helped compile everything into a neat folder. "You need to be prepared for Jordan to lash out," Michelle warned. "He'll try to discredit you in front of the board." Elizabeth nodded her determination, overshadowing her fear. She practiced her speech, reciting it in the mirror of her modest hotel room, where she had temporarily moved. Heart pounding, she told herself that if there was ever a time to fight, it was now. Finally, the day of the board meeting arrived. Elizabeth, dressed in a sleek black pantsuit that radiated confidence. She walked into the corporate skyscraper in downtown Dallas, her chin held high despite the knot in her stomach. She spotted Jordan in the corridor, flanked by Ava and a couple of the board members. As soon as he saw Elizabeth, his expression darkened. "You're not supposed to be here," Jordan said, trying to keep his voice low. Elizabeth raised her chin. "I'm still an investor in your company. I hold shares. So yes, I'm attending the board meeting." Ava stepped in with a condescending smile. "Don't make a scene, Elizabeth. This meeting is for serious stakeholders." "I am a serious stakeholder," Elizabeth retorted, voice steady. "I'm your wife, still legally, and I'm half of this empire's foundation." Behind them, a tall figure approached, CEO David Hartridge himself, a man in his 50s with graying temples and a firm handshake. He regarded Elizabeth with polite curiosity. "Ms. Alberts, I presume?" Elizabeth nodded, handing over her invitation papers and a letter from her attorney, which stated that she possessed partial shares. Hartridge studied the documents, then gave a curt nod indicating she was allowed to attend. Jordan shot Elizabeth a glare that spoke volumes. You have no idea what you're getting into. But Elizabeth did. She was here to preserve her dignity, her livelihood, and the legacy she had helped build. The meeting commenced in a sleek conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Dallas skyline. The board members sat around a large mahogany table, exchanging pleasantries about the upcoming quarter's projections. Jordan made a short presentation on a new partnership with a logistics firm, highlighting expansions and new contracts. A few board members clapped. Then came time for open discussion. Elizabeth raised her hand, clearing her throat. "I'd like to address some concerns about the financial structuring Jordan is proposing." She began, her voice reverberating across the silent room. Jordan's face reddened. Ava, seated beside him, tried to intervene. "We should keep personal matters out of board discussions," she said. But Elizabeth pressed on, raising the folder of evidence. "These changes aren't just personal," Elizabeth said. "They could affect company stability. Jordan is funneling resources into a new trust, making questionable decisions without transparency. I have documents signed by him with references to Ms. Ava Monroe, demonstrating a conflict of interest that could potentially compromise investor trust." A hush fell over the room. Hartridge's brow creased. "Jordan, is this true?" Jordan stood, scrambling for composure. "This is a personal matter. Elizabeth is overstepping her bounds." "She's not." Hartridge replied, his voice sharp. "If there's a conflict of interest that threatens the stability of our partnership, it's very much a board matter." Jordan's eyes darted between Hartridge and Elizabeth. For the first time, he seemed cornered, uncertain how to proceed. Ava shot Elizabeth a lethal glare, realizing that Elizabeth's boldness had forced the topic into official territory. The tension was palpable. Elizabeth's heart thumped so loudly, she was certain everyone could hear it. But she stood her ground. Continuing. "I also discovered lines of credit being taken against marital properties to fund expansions. These expansions could be legitimate, but the details are obscured. I have reason to believe Ms. Monroe is manipulating these finances for her personal gain." Murmurs rippled through the board. A couple members exchanged uneasy glances. Even those who might have sided with Jordan seemed rattled by the magnitude of Elizabeth's accusations. Hartridge steepled his fingers, evaluating the situation. "I propose we recess for 15 minutes. Jordan, Elizabeth, Ms. Monroe, please step into my office." Jordan inhaled frustration etched across his features, but he couldn't refuse the CEO's request, not without causing a catastrophic scene. The three followed Hartridge into a glass-walled corner office, shutting the door behind them. In that tense, enclosed space, the real battle began. Elizabeth laid out her evidence on the polished table before Hartridge. Jordan tried to dismiss it all as a personal dispute, but Hartridge was no fool. He could see the potential for scandal, especially if a partner was using company infrastructure for personal vendettas. Throughout this heated exchange, Ava attempted to deflect blame. She portrayed herself as a legal advisor, merely suggesting financial moves, disclaiming any wrongdoing. But Elizabeth's carefully compiled documents suggested otherwise. Emails, text messages, and proposed legal documents bore Ava's digital fingerprints. Hartridge's expression darkened. "Jordan, this is unacceptable. If these documents are authentic, you've put your personal entanglements ahead of corporate responsibility. I won't allow it under my leadership." Jordan's face went pale. He tried to protest, to label Elizabeth's claims as overblown, but Hartridge had already made up his mind. "Until this is sorted out, Jordan, I'm placing your proposals on hold. We can't move forward with any major financial changes if they're under this sort of ethical cloud." Elizabeth felt a surge of relief, a faint vindication. While she hadn't resolved the core issue of Jordan's betrayal, at least the board wasn't letting him run roughshod over her financial future. But Jordan, cornered and embarrassed, lashed out in desperation. "You can't shut me down like this. he snapped at Hartridge, voice tight with anger. I'm the one who made that original deal with your conglomerate. You need my innovation. Hartridge stood up, bristling at Jordan's tone. I'm the CEO, and you've just made me question your reliability and integrity. Watch yourself, Jordan. Ava stepped closer to Jordan, placing a hand on his arm to calm him, but he shrugged her off. You'll regret this, he warned Hartridge, then turned to Elizabeth. And you made a fool of me in front of everyone. Elizabeth clenched her fists, refusing to cower. You did that to yourself, she said, voice trembling with both fear and resolve. Jordan stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Ava followed quickly, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Hartridge sighed, looking at Elizabeth, who was holding back tears. Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Hartridge said. I'm sorry about your personal struggles, but I have to protect the board's interests. If you need anything, contact my office. I'm not a family court judge, but I won't let Jordan drag the company down. With that, Elizabeth let out a shaky breath. She had achieved a small but crucial victory, yet she couldn't shake the nagging sense that Jordan, humiliated and cornered, was far from finished. She left the skyscraper, stepping out into the bright Dallas sun, uncertain, but determined. Little did she know this chapter was only the start of a far more explosive confrontation, one that would involve security teams, sudden betrayals, and a twist that would bring Jordan himself to his knees. Life outside the mansion was lonely, but Elizabeth was thankful for the reprieve from Ava's manipulations. She rented a small apartment near downtown Austin and used what funds she had left to secure her basic needs, while Michelle continued to press for a financial freeze on Jordan's assets. In the weeks following the tense board meeting, Jordan went surprisingly quiet. No more legal letters arrived. No more credit lines were sabotaged. He didn't attempt to contact Elizabeth, nor did Ava. Instead, it seemed as though they had retreated into some silent fortress, likely strategizing their next move. Elizabeth took advantage of the lull. She reconnected with old friends and mentors, explaining partially at least what she was going through. While many were shocked, they offered support in the form of references, moral encouragement, and occasional leads for a stable job or a business partnership. Despite the heartbreak, Elizabeth discovered a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just a passive bystander in Jordan's world. She had her own capabilities, her own strengths. Slowly, she started consulting for small tech firms, using her communications and PR background to help them craft compelling pitches. It wasn't a fortune, but it was honest work that reminded her she could stand on her own 2 feet. Then one evening, she received a phone call from an unknown number. A crisp, professional voice greeted her. Hello, Elizabeth. This is Patricia Carlson. I'm an executive assistant at Tesla, working under Elon Musk's leadership team. Elizabeth's heart thudded. She had met Patricia briefly at a tech conference in Berlin 2 years ago, but they'd never exchanged more than pleasantries. How can I help you? Elizabeth asked, mind racing. Patricia hesitated. I might have information relevant to your predicament with Jordan. Let's just say some of our legal divisions have been observing Ava Monroe for a while, and some red flags have come up. Red flags. Elizabeth's curiosity flared. You're investigating her? A slow exhale from the other end. Our major concern is that she's potentially engaged in insider trading, or at least something that veers close to it. She's been known to manipulate powerful men to gain inside info on deals, especially around new technologies. We don't have direct evidence, but we do know that she's heavily involved in your husband's finances. We suspect she might be siphoning resources for her own agendas. Elizabeth's mind reeled. This was bigger than a domestic spat. Ava might be leveraging Jordan's resources and connections to stake her own claims in the tech world. That explained the sudden shifts in finances, the new trust accounts, and the lines of credit. Patricia continued. We want to bring her down, but we need more information. You, Elizabeth, might be in a unique position to gather that. Elizabeth tapped her fingers on the kitchen counter. Isn't that something your legal team handles? A rueful laugh. Yes, but we need Jordan's direct involvement. We suspect he's unwittingly giving her access to confidential materials through corporate crossovers or joint ventures. If you can help us prove it, we can kill two birds with one stone, protect Tesla's proprietary data, and help you gain leverage in your divorce. Elizabeth considered the offer. It was risky. If Ava was truly up to something illegal, Elizabeth could expose herself to potential backlash, but the lure of finally getting the upper hand was strong. I'll do what I can, Elizabeth replied cautiously. But how do I communicate with you about this? Patricia gave her a secure email address and instructions on how to encrypt files. And one more thing, Elizabeth Patricia said, before hanging up. People like Ava are cunning. She'll anticipate your every move. Don't trust phone lines or any device that Jordan has access to. Be careful. Elizabeth thanked her and ended the call. Adrenaline coursing through her. For the next few days, she scoured her digital archives for anything that might hint at insider information. Jordan's old emails messages about collaborations with major tech companies like Tesla or Amazon, documents that Ava might have manipulated anything that showed a trail of questionable activity. She found a few suspicious threads, forwarded emails from Jordan's corporate account that were CC'd to Ava's personal address. Attachments relating to Tesla's Project Next Gen battery were among them, though none of this was strictly proof of wrongdoing yet. Elizabeth compiled what she could and sent them to the secure email Patricia provided. In response, Patricia confirmed that these were valuable leads, but incomplete. Keep digging, she urged, and let me know if you get direct evidence of deals or monetary gains tied to these inside details. Meanwhile, Michelle Elizabeth's lawyer was preparing for a preliminary hearing to freeze some of Jordan's assets. She insisted Elizabeth come to court to testify about the financial abuse and the suspicious activities they had uncovered. But Jordan's side surprised them by agreeing to a partial freeze without argument. That's strange, Michelle said, tapping a pen against the conference table. Why would he agree so easily? Elizabeth shrugged, perplexed. Maybe he realizes fighting me will look bad in front of the board. But Michelle wasn't convinced. I suspect he's preparing a bigger move. Be vigilant. He may have more leverage than we know. The next morning, Elizabeth received an unsolicited text from Jordan. We need to talk, face to face. She felt a swirl of conflicting emotions, anger, sorrow, curiosity. But she knew she had to tread carefully. She agreed to meet him in a public place, a cafe near the courthouse, where she could keep the upper hand. When Jordan arrived, he looked tired, as though the weight of his troubles had worn him down. He offered a half smile, which Elizabeth did not return. Liz? He began using the old nickname he once uttered, with affection. Things got out of hand. She crossed her arms. You think? He sighed, scanning her face for warmth that was no longer there. I want to settle this amicably. We can discuss spousal support, property divisions, everything. No need for a long, nasty court battle. Elizabeth let the silence hover. She wasn't naive enough to believe him at face value. Amicably. Are you telling me Ava is out of the picture? Jordan's shoulders tensed. This is about you and me, not her. Look, maybe I got carried away with Ava's advice. She's a brilliant attorney. She's manipulative, Elizabeth cut in sharply. He brushed the point aside. Regardless, I'm willing to compromise, but I need you to lay off this insider trading nonsense. It's reckless. You're endangering my reputation. Elizabeth realized then that Jordan knew she'd been snooping into his communications. Perhaps Tesla's legal inquiries had begun reverberating in his circle. She saw the fear in his eyes. He was worried, if not about losing her, then about losing his empire. You made me the enemy, Elizabeth replied, in a hushed, trembling tone. When you let your mistress cut off my cards and throw me out of my home. Jordan looked away, shame flickering on his face. I didn't handle that well. But you have to understand the pressure I'm under with these deals. She waited, letting him squirm. Then he continued. You'll get a fair share. I promise. I just need you to stop meddling in my professional affairs, especially with Tesla or any other major collaborators. You'll ruin me if you do. A bitter laugh escaped Elizabeth. She thought of all the times she had stood beside him, protecting him, representing him before powerful players, forging alliances that were crucial to his success. Now he was pleading for her, not to ruin him. The irony nearly choked her. Before she could respond, Jordan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and muttered a soft curse. I have to go, he said, throwing some cash on the table for their untouched coffees. Elizabeth watched him leave a mixture of pity and disdain swirling in her stomach. It was obvious he was desperate, but was this a genuine attempt at reconciliation, or a ploy to keep her from uncovering more incriminating information about Ava? That question lingered as she returned to her apartment, drained. However, a new email from Patricia waited in her inbox. It contained an attachment, a partial timeline of suspicious trades linked to accounts rumored to be controlled by Ava Monroe. There were large bets placed on Tesla's stock ahead of public announcements. Gains in the tens of millions. This is huge, Elizabeth thought. If she connected these trades to emails or calls between Jordan and Ava, it could be the smoking gun. And while Elizabeth had no intention of going to the feds on her own, Tesla's legal team could bury Ava, and by extension, Jordan's complicity, if he was involved. Elizabeth clutched her phone, anxiety coursing through her. She was walking a razor's edge. One false step, and Jordan might retaliate more fiercely, or Ava might strike. But a successful strike against Ava could free Elizabeth from this entire ordeal, giving her the leverage to secure a fair divorce settlement, or even land Jordan in deeper trouble, depending on his role. She reached for her phone to text Patricia when it buzzed in her hand. A call from an unknown number again. Tentatively, Elizabeth answered. A man's voice greeted her calm and steady. Hello, Ms. Alberts. My name is Gregory Shaw. I'm part of CEO David Hartridge's legal counsel. He asked me to follow up regarding the situation with your husband. Elizabeth's heart skipped. Hartridge's legal counsel. We understand from Mr. Hartridge's conversation with you that there might be unethical or even illegal behavior in play. Gregory continued. The board is concerned about potential liability if Jordan's personal dealings spill into our corporate structure. We can't risk another scandal. Mr. Hartridge would like to assist you discreetly. Elizabeth exhaled slowly. She was on the cusp of powerful alliances forming against Jordan and Ava, but the more people got involved, the more dangerous it felt. Gregory concluded, We'll be in touch with your lawyer. If you have any crucial evidence, Mr. Hartridge suggests you keep it secure. He wants to avoid a public meltdown, but he's prepared to do what's necessary to protect the company's interests, and that includes supporting you in your legal disputes if it comes to that. Hanging up. Elizabeth felt a measure of validation. The cracks in Jordan's seemingly untouchable world were growing. Perhaps justice would prevail. Yet as she prepared to finalize the next round of documents for Michelle, a gnawing worry kept her awake at night. Cornered animals are the most dangerous, and Jordan, though once gentle and loving, had shown he could be ruthless when threatened. She braced herself for the storm that was surely coming. The next time Elizabeth saw Jordan in person, it wasn't by chance or a carefully arranged meeting. It was at the headquarters of Hartridge's conglomerate in Dallas. A sudden emergency board session had been called to address urgent corporate matters, and Elizabeth, having been notified by Gregory Shaw, arrived prepared. She walked into the reception area, her heart pounding with anticipation. Michelle Liu had insisted on accompanying her, but at the last minute she was called to handle a crucial filing. Elizabeth went alone, relying on the moral support from Gregory and the knowledge that Hartridge wanted the truth on record. Jordan was already inside the boardroom with Ava, who paced like a clad tiger. When Elizabeth entered, they both snapped their heads in her direction. Ava's glare could have sliced glass. Jordan's face was inscrutable, tense, angry, but also tinged with fear. Hartridge arrived moments later, trailed by a few board members and legal advisors. He wasted no time in stating the purpose of the meeting. Allegations have come to my attention that Ms. Monroe has been engaging in stock trades leveraging proprietary information from Jordan's company and potentially from our own collaborations. We need to clarify the truth. Now. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Ava's jaw clenched. This is preposterous, she began. We demand to see your proof. Hartridge nodded to one of his advisors, who distributed printed documents, timelines of suspicious trades tied to accounts flagged by Tesla's legal team, along with correspondences that Elizabeth and Patricia had pieced together. Jordan snatched a packet from the advisor. His eyes swept over the page's color, draining from his face. Ava's lips thinned, and for a moment Elizabeth could see the faintest flicker of panic in her eyes. Hartridge pinned them with a stern gaze. Jordan, you've been a valuable partner. I don't want to see your personal life derail your professional standing, but this is bigger than your marriage. Insider trading is a federal crime, and if Ms. Monroe is using your business resources to pull this off, you're implicated. Ava recovered quickly. She placed a hand on Jordan's arm, her voice smooth. This is a misunderstanding, David. Anyone can align stock trades with corporate announcements. It's called speculation. Elizabeth decided enough was enough. She stood. Speculation is one thing, but forwarding private emails, entire business proposals, and preliminary press releases is not speculation. I've seen the messages. You're literally discussing the best times to execute trades based on announcements that hadn't been made public yet. Ava whirled on Elizabeth. You have no legal standing to claim that. You're just a scorned wife trying to sabotage Jordan and me. Elizabeth's blood boiled. We'll let the evidence speak. There are even time-stamped emails from Jordan's corporate account sent to your personal email, Ms. Monroe, discussing upcoming expansions and product launches. Then trades were executed in your name or trusts linked to you within hours. A hush followed. Jordan's hands shook slightly. He seemed torn between denial and guilt. After all, the evidence was damning. If he denied it outright, he'd appear foolish. But if he admitted his involvement, he risked criminal charges and the wrath of the board. Hartridge leaned forward, his voice firm. Jordan, I need answers. Were you aware of these trades? Jordan stared at the table, words refusing to form. Finally, he managed, Ava said it was all above board, that it was just normal investing. Ava let out a short laugh, but it sounded hollow. If you want to scapegoat me, Jordan, think carefully, she warned. We made certain deals in your name as well. Your signatures are on plenty of documents. The entire boardroom seemed to hold its breath. Hartridge addressed one of his legal advisors. Have we sent this to the SEC? Not yet, the advisor responded. We wanted to confront them first. Jordan shot to his feet, panic etched on his face. No need to escalate it. We can handle this internally. If I undo the trades, repay any gains, repay tens of millions of dollars, Hartridge asked. And that would just be the tip of the iceberg if the SEC digs deeper. This is out of our hands if they launch a formal investigation. Elizabeth watched Jordan unravel. This was the man who had once been so composed, so unstoppable. Now he was cornered, sweat beading on his forehead. Ava, too, looked like a wild animal backed into a corner, eyes darting around the room. At that moment, a building security guard appeared at the door, knocking softly. Mr. Hartridge, you asked for security on standby, he announced quietly. Thank you, Hartridge replied, his tone like steel. I believe we might need you. Ava's eyes flitted towards the door, then back to Hartridge. She adopted a pleading tone. David, you know me. I've handled legal matters for some of the biggest players in the industry. I would never do anything to jeopardize your trust. Hartridge's face remained stony. I trusted Jordan, not you. And this evidence suggests you're at the center of a major ethical breach. If you don't have a verifiable explanation for each of these trades and how you obtained insider information, I have no choice but to protect the company from liability. Suddenly, Jordan snapped. Fear twisted into anger, and he pointed a trembling finger at Elizabeth. You did this. You ruined everything because you couldn't handle that I moved on. Elizabeth steadied her breathing, preparing to reply. But Hartridge cut in calm yet firm. Don't blame her for your poor decisions. You let your personal affair become a corporate liability. Something in Jordan cracked. He lunged toward Elizabeth as if to grab her documents or her phone, an irrational move likely spurred by desperation. But he never made contact. In a blink, the security guard stepped forward and intercepted Jordan, gripping his arms. Stand down, sir, the guard said, voice authoritative. Jordan struggled, but the guard was a solid wall of muscle. Ava shrieked. Let him go. This is a private matter. Hartridge shook his head, anger coloring his features. You just attempted to assault someone in my boardroom. Security remove Mr. Alberts from the premises. Jordan's eyes widened in disbelief. You can't do that. I'm on the board. Not anymore, Hartridge said grimly. I can and I will. You're suspended pending an internal investigation. Once that concludes, we'll determine your status. Now go and take Ms. Monroe with you. A second guard stepped in, guiding Ava toward the door as she protested threatening lawsuits and defamation claims. But her words rang hollow, overshadowed by the looming specter of an SEC investigation. Elizabeth stood off to the side, stunned by how quickly it had escalated from a tension-filled meeting to an outright meltdown. As Jordan and Ava were led out, Jordan craned his neck to shout at her. You'll pay for this, Elizabeth. Don't think you've won. But the threat carried little weight now. In that moment, Elizabeth felt the mixture of triumph and sorrow that comes with toppling a man she once loved. She hadn't wanted to see Jordan destroyed, only to protect herself and the life they had built together. But Jordan's actions and Ava's ambition had forced her hand. Hartridge dismissed the board members soon after instructing his legal team to cooperate fully with any investigations. He turned to Elizabeth with a sympathetic frown. "I'm sorry you had to endure this, Miss Alberts. I assure you we'll handle it lawfully. Whatever personal or marital disputes remain, I hope you find closure." Elizabeth gave him a small nod. "Thank you. I appreciate your fairness." She gathered her documents and left the skyscraper, the bright Texas sun striking her face as she stepped onto the street. The entire drama replayed in her mind. He let his mistress cut off my cards, but the CEO called security on him. She thought a bitter yet satisfying sense of irony spreading in her chest. She wasn't naive enough to think it was over. Legal battles would continue, depositions would be taken, and the divorce was far from final. But in this pivotal moment, she had taken back her power, standing against the storm that Jordan and Ava had unleashed. And for the first time in months, Elizabeth felt a glimmer of hope that she might in the end be free from their tyranny. In the weeks that followed, word spread like wildfire. News outlets picked up on rumors of insider trading linked to a high-profile tech investor, hinting that a major name was under investigation. It didn't take long for the rumor mill to connect the dots to Jordan Alberts and his mysterious attorney-turned-partner, Ava Monroe. Elizabeth watched from the sidelines, inundated with calls and messages from acquaintances, reporters, and sometimes even old college classmates she hadn't spoken to in years. She ignored most of them, preferring to let the legal process unfold without adding fuel to the media frenzy. Jordan, under immense legal and financial pressure, attempted to strike a deal if Elizabeth agreed to keep quiet and not testify against him or Ava. Regarding insider trading, he would give her a generous divorce settlement. The settlement included alimony, a hefty lump sum, and properties that would secure her financial future. However, Elizabeth refused any agreement that required her to lie or withhold the truth if subpoenaed. Nonetheless, she allowed her lawyer Michelle to work out a fair settlement that didn't involve perjury. Eventually, Jordan capitulated, realizing he had to salvage what he could from the marriage and business meltdown. The final settlement granted Elizabeth a significant portion of the assets, the mansion by Lake Travis, ironically, and a sizable share of Jordan's original tech startup. Meanwhile, Ava disappeared from the public eye, her reputation in tatters. Rumors surfaced that she'd fled the country perhaps to avoid legal repercussions, while others suggested she was hiding out in some luxury villa, waiting for the storm to pass. Either way, her days of meddling in Jordan's finances seemed to be over. Elizabeth didn't celebrate Jordan's downfall. She quietly grieved the end of a marriage that had started in love and partnership, yet she also felt relief and a renewed sense of self. She returned to the Lake Travis mansion, deciding whether to keep it or sell. The sweeping views of the water brought back memories, some of which felt like knives to her heart, others that warmed her soul. She began a new chapter in her life, leveraging her PR skills to start a consultancy focused on helping women entrepreneurs navigate both business and personal challenges. She named it Phoenix Rose Consulting, symbolizing rebirth and resilience. To her surprise, she found more joy in championing other women than she ever did, standing behind Jordan at glitzy galas. She kept in touch with Patricia from Tesla, who occasionally updated her on the ongoing investigations. Whether Jordan faced criminal charges depended on further evidence, but at least for Elizabeth, the immediate threat to her assets and well-being had lifted. David Hartridge reached out, once inviting Elizabeth to a dinner with the board, presumably to mend fences. Elizabeth politely declined. She had no desire to relive the tension of board meetings or navigate corporate politics, where her personal life became public fodder. She was grateful for Hartridge's stance, but preferred to build her future away from the chaos. In moments of solitude, Elizabeth reflected on the entire ordeal. She'd once believed that love, loyalty, and shared ambition could conquer anything. Yet she also realized that unchecked power and ego could corrode even the strongest of bonds. Jordan's betrayal had been a painful lesson, but it set her free to discover her own strengths and a life not tethered to someone else's rising star. Yes, heartbreak lingered, and healing was an ongoing process. But Elizabeth found herself waking each day with a sense of purpose. She'd gather with female founders at local co-working spaces, host workshops on media relations, and offer moral support to those feeling overshadowed by bigger players. Each time she saw a spark of confidence ignite in another woman's eyes, she felt her own sense of wholeness return. In time, Elizabeth would finalize the divorce, sign the deeds, and officially start over. A sense of calm settled within her, like the slow, tranquil waves on Lake Travis at dawn. Her story, the humiliating card cancellations, the public meltdown, the mistress's meddling, would become a cautionary tale, one she shared sparingly, only when it might help others. Despite the scars, Elizabeth refused to let bitterness define her. She chose growth empathy, and a belief that with the right support, anyone can rise from the ashes more formidable than before. Just as Elizabeth thought she had reached stable ground, fate tossed her another curveball. A month after the settlement, Michelle called her urgently. "The feds want to depose you," she said. They uncovered new evidence Jordan may be involved in deeper crimes, bribery, money laundering. Ava might have orchestrated a network. Elizabeth's stomach dropped. Jordan never mentioned anything like that. They've found offshore transactions and documents with his signature, Michelle said grimly. 2 days later, Elizabeth sat in a stark federal office, flanked by Michelle and 2 serious agents. They questioned her about Jordan's finances, Ava's role, the card cancellations, and philanthropic events that may have masked backdoor deals. Elizabeth stuck to the facts. She neither speculated nor dramatized. One agent, impressed, said, "You've been very helpful, Ms. Alberts. This case is significant." She left emotionally drained but relieved. She hadn't been dragged down with Jordan, but the storm wasn't over. Whispers followed Jordan was hiding at a secluded ranch, dodging the press. Ava had vanished. More subpoenas were issued. An indictment loomed. Elizabeth stayed focused on her consultancy, channeling stress into helping other women navigate business pitfalls. Her story, once painful, became a symbol of warning and strength. Then came the headlines: Jordan Alberts indicted for insider trading, fraud, and obstruction. Ava was named but still missing. The scandal rocked the tech world. Elizabeth issued a single statement. "I'm saddened by Jordan's choices. I've cooperated fully with authorities and continue to rebuild my life." Eventually, Jordan pled guilty to a lesser charge, offering a tearful courtroom apology. Elizabeth watched from home, tears in her eyes, not from triumph, but quiet grief for the man she once loved. Still, she understood consequences had to follow actions. That night, beneath the soft moonlight over Lake Travis, Elizabeth allowed herself one last cry, for the past that died and the hope still waiting ahead. Life has a way of testing our fortitude when we least expect it. Elizabeth Alberts began this journey as a devoted wife, only to see her world upended by betrayal and financial sabotage. Yet what she lost in illusions, she gained in unbreakable resilience. Standing up to powerful forces and calling out wrongdoing isn't easy, but it's sometimes the only way to protect your dignity and your future. If you found this story gripping, insightful, or inspiring, we invite you to be a part of our community. Like this video, share it with friends who need a reminder that courage can emerge from chaos, and subscribe for more real-life drama and empowering tales. Let Elizabeth's story serve as a beacon, no matter how ruthless the betrayal. There's always a path to reclaim your power and build a brighter tomorrow. You too can rise like a phoenix.